Welcome to another episode of the Nashville Dads. This week we have an owner of the Peg Leg Porker, Carey Bringle. We talked about how he started his barbecue career, the early days in Nashville, having his kids work for him, why he started Bringles Smoking Oasis, his reaction to one-star reviews, Peg Leg Porker Spirits, FatBelly Pretzels, and all the ups and downs of being a family-owned restaurant. We really hope you enjoy the episode.
Again, thanks for having us, or thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
But how did you start this Peg Leg Porker brand? And just tell us a little bit about that starting off.
Yeah, sure. Well, I had cooked barbecue for a long time. So I started cooking barbecue probably when I was 12 or 13 with my uncle and with my granddad. And that was always something that I did. When I got out of college, I went down to, my uncle had competed in the very first Memphis in May. And when I was in college, my wife, told me that her cousins were cooking down there. She's now my wife, at the time was my girlfriend. And so we decided to go down there, I think right after I graduated college, or right before I was about to graduate. And we went and we hung out with her cousins' teams, which was called the Rolling Wonder Pigs. And we had a blast. We had a great time. It was fun. They got kicked out that year, but we had a dynamite time up until then. And so anyway, I went into the clinical lab business, and actually they moved me to Memphis. And I had already told the guys on that team, Ernie Miller and Trip Murray, that I wanted to join the team. And they were like, yeah, you're welcome to. And so when I moved down to Memphis, that just made it all the more convenient. So I cooked with Hog Wild for about 12 years. And then I decided I wanted to start my own team. And at that point, I had to come up with a name. And so I came up with Peg Leg Porker, because I had one leg and I literally was the Peg Leg Porker.
That's right.
And so I started that team and then that brand, and I had a bunch of sponsors that I brought on. And one of them being the Lobels, which is a fifth-generation butcher out of New York who did a mail-order company. And I had been in that business with a mail-order gourmet food company. And then they asked me to bottle my seasoning and my sauce, and so I did. And so I started, with that as the brand and started building the brand from there. And then, I found I was in healthcare. Then I went into technology and always cooked barbecue along the way and did Memphis in May every year. And so finally I decided I wanted to do the restaurant and, expand everything. And I did that in 2012 and started building out Peg Leg, and then, opened the restaurant, I think, in 2013. And here we are. So
yeah, awesome. And are you originally from Nashville?
I'm born and raised in Nashville, and my family is all from Memphis. So my mom and dad grew up in Memphis. My grandfather grew up in Covington, and so I grew up going back and forth from Memphis to Nashville to see my family, my grandparents, and my uncle, and so that's where the barbecue traditions came from, and that's where that's why we do West Tennessee style barbecue, because that's really where we got our barbecue when I was growing up.
So I went to Belmont from like 2006 to 2010. Yep. And I always remember driving through the Gulch, and like it was just scaffolding. It was like nothing there at all.
It was rough. Yeah,
it was. What were because you guys are in the Gulch, right? That's where your main look. Yeah. What were the early years like there? Because now the Gulch is like vibrant. There's people everywhere. But dude, early 2010s, it was a ghost town.
No, it was not. So we're on the back side of the Gulch.
Yes, you are.
That made it even worse. We were on the rough side, and the building that we bought was an old electrical contractor, Shannon Electric, and I had originally picked out a spot that was right next to Arnold's. If you're facing Arnold's, then it was right to the right of it. It was an antique store called Estelle's. And I knew that they were going to get rid of her because she wasn't paying her rent. And so I signed I waited on them to get rid of her. And I really wanted that spot because it had high visibility on 8th Avenue.
Yeah.
I had gone to all the planning meetings where they were doing a master plan for the city of Nashville, and the convention center was well under construction, but they had a bunch of different other phases they were going to do, like extending Division past Frugal McDougal's there onto downtown, and then they were going to build a pedestrian bridge in the Gulch, and they were just doing a whole lot of stuff. I also knew as a native Nashvilleian that most people who worked downtown but lived in Green Hills or Brentwood traveled down 12th Avenue. Well, as 12th Avenue and 12 South grew, I knew that that traffic would be diverted, and it was only a 2-lane road, and so that people would shift their traffic patterns over to 8th Avenue. And that's why I wanted to be on 8th.
Yep.
I got that. I got the lease. I got the keys, and we signed the lease. And then while we were waiting for the owner to co-sign, his family got with him and asked him to change it from a 5-year with 2 3-year options. And it originally was supposed to be a 5-year with 2 5-year options. By the time we signed the lease, they changed it to a 5-year with 2 3-year options. I signed it. They had written it. I signed it. They got with their family over 4th of July weekend, and they convinced the dad to just sign it for 5 years. And, I already had the keys at this point, and I turned around and had some very choice words for the real estate agent and for the family, and basically said, I will never do business with somebody who does business like this. I waited for a year for this space. You told me one thing, you changed it before we got to the lease, which is your prerogative. But once I signed the lease, it was your duty to co-sign it, or to countersign it. And now you're trying to change terms on me. And I don't think that's very ethical. And I'm not going to sign I'm not going to dump a bunch of money into a place that I only have for 5 years.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Idiotic. So I thought my world had crashed down, and my wife was like, maybe it's for a reason. And I said the same choice words to her that I did to Hannah. But it turned out she was right. Yeah. I had already looked at this Shannon Electric building, and I really liked it because it was a cinder block building with no windows.
Yeah.
And that's really what I wanted. At the time, most of the barbecue places in Nashville had barn wood and tin and country music, and that was kind of the feel.
Yeah.
And they kind of were everything to everybody. So they served brisket, chicken, everything, and chicken fingers and all that. I didn't want to be that because my barbecue roots were West Tennessee, and that's more blues and soul and concrete and cinder block and straight barbecue, and that's it. And so that's what we did. I was able to buy the building, and then we built it out, and we opened up. Now there's a lot that happened in between. It was fun, but that's essentially the shorter version of that story.
I'm in the landscape industry, and I have Harlow, the property that's basically right behind you guys, and then I have Madera Gulch, Aspire. Like, I have a whole bunch of different properties right there. So whenever I go to see those properties, I always hit you guys up.
Oh yeah, well, no, that's great. Well, and like you said, so I got off track, but back in the days, I knew what was going to happen with the downtown area, and when the convention center opened, I knew what kind of economic development it would spur.
Yeah.
So, luckily, because all my family and friends were like, "Where you going? Where? What the hell?"
Aren't the railroad tracks across the street?
Yeah, they were like, you're on the wrong side of the tracks.
Yep.
And but I was confident in my decision, and I knew that with a good reputation and good barbecue, people would come to us, and they subsequently did, and there was nothing around us, and it was rough. There was this urban club behind us. There were shootings over there.
Oh,
it was really a rough area when we opened. We had a bunch of stuff stolen outside in the parking lot and all that. And always something. Somebody would graffiti us or something. Yeah. But, we just powered through it. And, now we're surrounded by high rises and even more being built around me. And it's been a great investment in the fact that I bought the building and that I bet on the neighborhood. That has allowed us to do so much more with the company because we have the equity in the building.
Yeah. Yeah, because back in like 2012, I think it would have been you guys and Yazoo. Like those were to go to that area of the Gulch. That was it. There wasn't any other reason to go down those
And
side
Yazoo
streets.
had gone into an old porno shop.
Did they really?
Oh yeah. When Linus bought that building, he was like, it was gross.
Gotta sterilize everything.
Yeah, it was a gross building when he bought that thing. So he made a bet on the Gulf, and we did as well. And they were great neighbors. We really enjoyed being, near them, and so that was dynamite.
That's awesome.
So, and we already had a relationship with Yazoo before I moved there because they had been a sponsor for my barbecue team down in Memphis in May.
Cool.
Oh, cool.
Nice. So, do you ever miss the healthcare world or any of that life? Any of your former life work in the more corporate world?
No.
Not so much.
I enjoyed it. I was in the clinical lab industry, and then I started a DME company with a business partner, and we subsequently split because we had different ethical views.
Yep.
And so I don't miss it.
You're good.
I'm good.
Yep.
That world pulled me in for far too many years.
Yep.
And I liked the technology world. Sometimes I miss that, but I certainly enjoy this. Barbecue world has been good to me.
Nice. How many kids do you have, and like how old are they?
I have 3 children. My oldest is now 27, and it's young Carey. And then I have Conley, my middle child, who's 26. They're 12 months and 2 weeks apart. And then my daughter, Katie, who is about to be 24.
Nice. So for most of your parenting life, were you more working in like healthcare and technology before you started your barbecue world?
Well, not particularly. I mean, for a lot of it, but I think Carey was 14 or 15 when we opened the restaurant. And so they were young. And it was tough. I'm not going to lie. Opening a restaurant is very tough on a family, and especially if you have young children.
Yeah.
I was here constantly. We told the kids, if you want to see Dad, then you're going to have to go down to the restaurant, or you're going to have to work at the restaurant because that's where I was going to be. For the first 3 years we were open, I was probably here every day, every shift that we were open. Yeah. And
did your kids?
Go ahead.
Did your kids end up working for you?
They did. They've worked on and off for me over the whole time that we've been here. The boys started in the back and on smokers and in the kitchen and washing dishes, and then my daughter was on the register, and she was still one of the best register girls we'd ever had when she was just like 14 or 15.
Oh, wow.
She was excellent. And now she works in my back kitchen in my catering, and my oldest son works for me with my liquor company.
Yeah.
And my middle son, Conley, has a structural steel welding business, but he's done a bunch of work on my liquor facility, and then I also own that business with him. I'm his
nice.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So what made you get in?
It is
really
I
bet.
So,
what made you go into the liquor business?
I'm a bourbon drinker, and always have been. I had a sponsorship on my barbecue team, still have it with Jim Beam, and have always had a great relationship with them. When the opportunity presented itself to start my own spirits company, I jumped at it. It was at the wrong time. It was 6 months after we started the restaurant, but we made it work because it was a great opportunity and it was something that I wanted to do. And, we started doing it and have slowly grown it. And now we're in 18 states and in multiple countries. And we, in 2023, we won World's Best Bourbon.
Oh, wow.
And then this last year in 24, our 8-year-old won Best in Class, which is essentially World's Best Bourbon at Singapore World Spirits. And our 12-year-old won Best in Class in New York, essentially a world title as well. Thank you.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's
well,
been
if I
good.
wasn't sober, I would definitely try it.
There you go. There you go.
Because I loved bourbon.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a Kentucky boy, so I loved bourbon, but I loved it a little too much.
Yep. No, I
Yep.
understand.
That can happen.
Sometimes I do that. So,
Carey has the same problem as you, Justin.
That's right.
Loves the bourbon a little too much some nights. Just depends on the night.
when I drink too much, I just go to sleep. So it's I never was a problem with it. I cross my hands like yes and nod right off.
Just sit down in the chair and be like, I'm not getting back up from this chair. Here we go.
That's right. That's exactly what happens.
What's it feel like to have all three of your kids be adults and like work in your business with you? How's your relationship with them feel? Because that's very different than them being like little kids.
It's tough. It's not easy. It's not always easy.
Yeah.
It is. There's been there's very rewarding moments about it, and there's very defeating moments about it. So,
yeah.
I have fired all of them probably, some of them multiple times, and it's as a parent, you're trying to learn how to parent because you never have done it before, and there's no manual. You're trying to show them the value of hard work, but at the same time, sometimes they just want their dad. And then, when they come to work for you, it can be difficult because they're going to tend to get more scrutiny than anybody else because they're the boss's child. You need to be critical of your team and you need to correct them. And a lot of times that's done, you're doing that where other people see it, and that's not easy on a child to be criticized in public. And if I had to do things over again, I would tell you that is probably the biggest mistake that I made, was criticizing my children in front of other people. And some of them took that fine and didn't have a problem with it, and some of them took that very to heart and still struggle with it. So it's that is where it's very tough sometimes for family to work together. And the people at my restaurant, we've got a lot of families and a lot of that work together with parents and children that both work here, and we're a tight knit group. And then I have some of my best friends that either work for me or work with me, and that have known my children since they were born. And so then to be criticized from me or criticized from them because they feel like they can criticize them as well because they know them so well, then it can be tough on them. And I get that. And as I'm older, I realize that more now. And you certainly have regrets on what you could have done different or better. And that would be mine right there.
Yeah. No, I think it's, I know if I criticize or correct my kids, it's always more a reactive thing. And it's not like aware of the scenario that we're in. Like if your kid says something dumb, you look at him and go, what are you doing? Stop doing this. And then you look around and you're like, we're in public. I should have just stepped to the side with you for half a second and been like, hey man, when you do this, this is what you're really communicating when you say this. Don't do this. So already with a 9, 7, and 3-year-old, I've had multiple moments where I'm like, hey man, don't correct in public. Like that's not going to help your relationship in the ways you think it will.
Yeah,
it doesn't. I can attest to it. It does not. And I'm very close with my children.
Yeah.
But I saw a saying the other day that said, when you criticize your child in public, they don't stop loving you, but sometimes they stop loving themselves, and that's And so, that's the that's the dilemma. You want to correct but it's just as a parent, and certainly as a busy parent and somebody who's working their ass off and stressed, that can be a difficult assignment.
Would you, so obviously the correcting in public was something that you wish you could have changed. What about just having them work in general for you? Is that something that in hindsight, you're like,
I debate with that in my head too. I wanted to show them the value of hard work. I wanted them to be proud of what our family built. We're 100% family owned and operated. We don't have any partners or any backers or anybody. And so we truly are a family business. And so it was important for people to see the family in here and know who we are. And I think that certainly helped our success. But yes, it can be difficult. You know, when you got a 14 or a 15-year-old back on a dish pit, you know, and they're under pressure because you're busy as hell, then it can be, you know, tough. And then when people who've known them their whole life, you know, see that they're slacking off or hiding somewhere not to do work and yell at them, then that, you know, all that's tough. It's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm debating on whether or not I let Ada or Briar work for me.
Yeah.
I would love that, I think, but I also, I mean, just to your point, I would hate to like just have those times where it's just like, all right, I should have just not had you work for me.
No, and I've certainly sent them to work for other people as well. And but you know, you just don't know until you know, and it's tough to feel through those situations, and you know, you just try and figure it out. And not every industry is the same. Now, you know, what I've tried to tell my children is, hey, this was my dream, and this does not have to be yours. And so don't feel like you need to come and work for me or be here. There's a job here for you if you want it, but if you don't, that's okay. Go do something else, and I'll support you in that.
Yeah.
But you know, then you also got your wife involved. So you know, and my wife and I've been together for 38 years. I mean, we're very frank with each other. We're very straightforward, and you know, when you say, well, I had to discipline, you know, so-and-so child today, or I had to fire him, and then your wife is like, well, what the hell, you know? Or she's like, why are you letting somebody yell at the child? And you're like, well, if they're not doing their job, that's what happens in our business.
Yeah.
I mean, they got to be held accountable.
Yep.
That's just is what it is, and I can't put a child with a manager and then the child not perform and me expect for my manager to be okay with that. That's a tough dynamic as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. That would be.
I'm really, really struggling. I would love, like I said before, I would love for Ada, especially because she's a girl in the landscape industry. There are very few of those, and I think having that hard work instilled in her would be awesome. So I'm always curious to hear other people that own businesses or run businesses, and whether or not they have their kids work with them or not. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Justin, Ada's only 3, so like you still got like
you got
a decade or so. Yeah,
I got time. I know, but I am looking forward to it.
Yeah. No, because I think it's like, I mean, if you run a small business, restaurants especially take everything from you. And you do kind of want to share it with your kids because you're like, hey, this is my passion project. This is a lot of me as well. And you want, I mean, like it's a way also to show your kids like your personality and who you are as a person. So it's a natural to be like, hey, come work with me so you can see what this world is like that I'm building. But then also at the same time, they get to see the world that you're trying to build, and they don't always like that at times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that also gives you a chance to show them the work ethic.
Yeah.
To be a model for that, for them, on the work ethic, the dedication, and for them to be able to see their own father do that, I think could only benefit them.
Yeah. I think it's hard to know how to show your kids like because I think running a business is a lot of just problem solving on the fly whenever you aren't in control of stuff. And that's basically what I feel like you show your kids whenever they come and work for you. It's like, okay, here's how your dad reacts whenever he has no control of a situation or limited control, and he still has to figure out how to be nice even though he just got screwed over. Who is your dad in this scenario?
Yeah, 100%. My children have certainly seen me get mad.
Well, I mean, if you're dealing with like vendors, people are saying they're going to deliver stuff, pick up stuff, and then they don't, and like then you're sitting there and you're like, where the F are you? It's hard to. I don't know how to say that in a polite tone when someone doesn't follow through. Sometimes.
No. It's it's. I'm pretty level-headed at work and with my team and with vendors and all, and I think my children see much more of that now. You get a lot more frustrated with the child than you typically do a vendor or somebody else that works with you. So the child tends to get the brunt of rather than the vendor or or a team member. So and I try and lead here at the restaurant by not yelling or losing my temper, and we try and have an environment where everybody feels good, and the old days of screaming in the restaurants are over, and so I try and lead by example by keeping my cool and saying, hey, look, people make mistakes, but we do have rules, and this is the and I've tried to do that much more with my children, and just and think to myself before I start yelling, hey, hold on here, let's not. We can say this and we can have consequences, but we don't need to yell about it,
Yeah. So and as time has gone on with your business, have you been able to scale back from being there every day like you were when you first started?
Oh yeah, 100%. So I've got a great team here. I have a great GM, and for years, we call him my right leg man, Steve Dresch, worked right alongside of me, and he's still here. And then I've got somebody transitioned into the bigger GM role. And so I've had a great team, and like I said, a lot of families, and so I'm not I'm at the restaurant every day, but I'm in my corporate office, which is where I'm sitting right now.
Cool.
On the second floor, and I'm not down on the floor as much. I go down to the floor every afternoon and I have a drink, and that way I can see my staff, and I'm back and forth. So my staff see me all day, but I'm in my office attending to other business. We have 8 or 9 companies, and so there's a lot more than just the restaurant to do.
One of my favorite barbecue places in Nashville was always Smoking Oasis. Can you tell us like what went into making the Smoking Oasis and all of your thoughts behind that also? Because it is like one thing we always talk to Daz about on here is like, where's a space where you can go to where your kids can run around at the same time? And Smoking Oasis is a great spot to go outside, eat barbecue, watch sports. Your kids are running around having a good time, and you don't feel like you're ruining the vibe of the restaurant the entire time.
No, 100%. And so the Smoking Oasis is great. I was not going to open another barbecue place. The model for Peg Leg Porker is that we have one restaurant, and then we can build product set around that, and products that we can take nationwide or globally. But that if you want to come to the physical manifestation of Peg Leg, here it is. This is the one.
That's pretty cool.
And we like to say we're building a legacy, not a chain. And Smoking Oasis, I had a friend of mine call me up who does a lot of real estate investment and development. And he said, hey, I got this piece of property. We thought that a restaurant was going to go in here. It was supposed to be Locust was supposed to go in there.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And he said, plans have changed. That group bought something in the Gulch. In 12 South. That's where they're going to put it now. So now we've got this property. We don't have anything to go here. I think you ought to come over and open a taco place or something. I think it could be really cool. And, it was a funky spot that was a triangular lot, an old gas station. And I said, look, I wasn't planning on opening another restaurant. And 2, I don't like to rent. So probably not. And then he called me back like a week later, and he's like, hey, listen, okay, so it's me and my buddies own this property. And he's like, we will bring you in so you could own a piece of this property.
Oh, cool.
And I said, okay, well, that's enough to get me to look at it.
Yeah.
And so, and at the meantime, I had a buddy of mine that was like, hey, man, you ought to open a restaurant and do beef ribs. And I was like, I don't know about that. And he was like, you got to do beef ribs. You just have to do beef ribs. And I was like, He's like, nobody in town's doing beef ribs. You got to do a beef rib.
Mm-hmm.
And so that kind of was sticking in the back of my mind. And I painted myself into a corner with peg leg, which I intended to do. We have a very limited menu. It's very focused. It's just what we call real Tennessee barbecue. It's pork and chicken. There's no beef at all.
Yeah.
6 sides. It's, very limited. I went and looked at it, and I was like, and I started to see what it could potentially be. And then he called me up like a week later, and he goes, "We'll sell you the property." And I go, "Oh, okay. All right. Now I'm interested if I can buy the property." Mm-hmm. And so we went down that road. I developed the concept. I had been to a Texas ice house, which has a big yard and is kind of cool. And they're, Nashvillians are not really familiar with that concept, but they're typically like a small, restaurant or food type place with a ton of beer and a ton of drinks. And in a big yard and picnic tables and all that. So I thought about calling it, Bringles Ice House or the Smoking Ice House or something. And I thought, nobody in Nashville knows what the hell an ice house is.
Yep.
And so I thought, well, it's on this triangular lot that's kind of in the middle of this intersection in between these streets. It's kind of like an oasis. And it had the canopy up there, and it was the old gas station. So I was like, okay, well, I think we're going to call it Bringles Smoking Oasis. And we started to draw it out and develop it. And then I was like, I think this will be cool. And we had to get a lot of easements. There was an easement that went through it, and then we had to get a parking variation. And so I actually bought it before those things were approved. And so I took a really big chance.
Yeah.
Because if either one of those had not been approved, I'd have been screwed.
Yep.
And so we got them approved, and then we were able to start building out. I was like, this ought to be turfed, and this is going to be really cool. And, I had the vision for it. I could see the knee wall fence, the wall and then the fence above it. And it ended up turning out great, and just I was like, this will be a neighborhood family spot. Yeah. Bring the dogs, bring the kids, everybody hang out, and we'll serve Texas style barbecue. Very few people were doing barbecue sliced in front of you by the pound.
Yeah.
And there was Texas, and Jack's does it to some extent, but they weren't really doing it as serious as the places in Texas. And I thought, well, this is where we can differentiate it. And then I'm like, I could be a lot more creative over here. We can do a lot more different specials and this and that. Yeah. And so it was attractive. And so we opened it up, did well. Everybody loved it, but we were really constricted by the weather. And so this last year we invested in the new canopy, and now we've got roll down plastic sides, and we've added radiant heaters.
Nice.
And so now we've added, about 2,500 more square feet of covered space that's still open during the spring and the summer weeks, but it gives more shade during the summer, and during the winter, now it's heated. And so it's great. And it makes us much more weatherproof and much more friendly for the neighborhood. And that's been a great addition.
Yeah, because you guys, I feel like at that spot, that's where I'll always find like smoked sausages, like very experimental things where I'm like, oh, I would normally not get this, but here it is in front of me. I have to now buy it and eat it.
Yeah, we do smoked sausages. We do, smoked turkey over there.
Yeah.
Our smoked pastrami is a huge hit.
Yes.
One I tell everybody to get.
Yep.
And then, of course, a brisket. Out on Sundays, we'll do beef ribs. It's something that we announce because we do a limited amount. And then, we do like tamales over there. We do a brisket sloppy Joe. We're doing a brisket Philly cheese and a beef and cheddar. And then, what we noticed is people were coming, and getting lunch, and then coming out in the yard and hanging out. Mm-hmm. And if their teams were on, if their games, and they're hanging out watching the big screens, and they sit and they'll drink for 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
And then they need to eat something again, but they don't want to go get another heavy meal of brisket and all the sides. So we put a short order kitchen out in a container in the yard, and we call that the Snack Shack. And then
That's awesome.
in the Snack Shack, we've got smash burgers and beef tallow French fries and wings and, hot dogs and just sort of pick-me-up food, bags of chips.
Yeah.
And so that's great to have. So we've got some variety there.
Yeah.
That can keep people the people will stay and continue to hang out and watch games and drink.
Yeah, I'm looking at a picture right now, and you have 2 ginormous TVs.
We do, yeah. We've got the 2 big old jump. They're 12-foot by 6-foot TV.
Wow.
Yeah, they're great. And so when you come to, if say UT's playing, or Auburn or somebody, people, if they can't go to the actual game themselves, there's no other better place to watch it than at the Oasis. It's like during a big UT game, that yard will get completely full, and it's like a stadium atmosphere. It's just everybody loves it. It's a fun place to be for a game.
I think I was there whenever UT was in the College World Series. And yes, it was just a sea of orange and everyone desperately watching the next pitch every single time. So it was really cool.
I'm thinking about adding a 3rd big screen up there. So
wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I had somebody give us a 1-star this year because we had UT on one big screen and we had Auburn or Alabama on the other big screen. And he was like, "Don't you know you're in UT country? This is bullshit that you didn't have it on both."
Oh my
screens."
gosh!
It's a 12-foot by 6-foot TV. You can see from outer space.
Yeah.
And you're mad. I was like, we do have fans that come here that are Auburn and Alabama and Ole Miss people, and it's not just It's not just about UT.
I thought for a second you were going to say he was going to complain that you only had SEC teams on. Not that he's that he's just there's UT and then there's no sports. Those are your 2 options.
It was ridiculous.
I'm sure we could get you into some good side tangents into some 1-star reviews you've received and what that's been like.
Man,
I'll answer them too.
Oh, do you?
I don't have any problem answering them.
Google can be so harsh with those reviews, and some of them you're like, I don't even know this person. How is he able to put a bad review on?
Oh, I had one. I had one that I had to quell. Yeah. We had this guy come in. It was an older man. And this was a real famous one that we did because it was a big game day like that, and we had run out of most of our food, but not everything. We still had some proteins, and they'd been there for a couple of hours and were drinking. It was a man and his wife, and I guess his sort of adult sons, or they were in their 18s or 20s or something. And I'm sitting there with my group. I'll rope off an area for me and my group to sit because if I don't, I won't get a seat. Yeah. And so I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden this kid walks in with 4 pizzas, and and we have a big sign up there with there's the yard rules, and the very first one is no outside food and drink. And so I just looked up and I said, "Hey guys, you can't bring those in here." And they were like, "Well, I mean, we just went and got them." And I was like, "Well,
sucks for you.
Not my problem. I mean, sit in a state park." I said, "You can't bring that food in here." And they were like, "Well, I got to go see my dad." And this guy comes up, and he kind of gets up behind me. I'm sitting. I never move out of my chair, and I'm in this low chair and a rocking chair. And he's up in my face, and he's like, "Hey, I just bought these pizzas. And you're out of food." And I said, "Well, we're not out of food. We're out of the food that you want to eat right now, but we're not out of food." I said, "I got a sign on the door that says no outside food or drink." I'm like, "This is a restaurant. You're not walking in somebody else's restaurant, bringing in a steak and saying, I'm here to eat this." And anyway, he just kept on, and my buddies got into it with him, and then he was like, "I'm a CEO of a hospital," and I was like,
"Okay,
great." I said, "Here's the deal. I can't come in your hospital and bring my own syringes and expect you to be okay with it, for my own medical supplies. You're going to probably have a problem." He tried to argue with me, and then he was trying to get, my buddy was like, "Hey, dude, he's just trying to enjoy the game. Could you leave him alone? He's the owner." And he was like, "You want to go, buddy?" And he started, he started pointing at my buddy. He's like, "We can go because I'm gonna leave, but I'll go outside and I'll whip your ass." And my buddy was like, "First of all, I'll whip your ass." Yeah. And second of all, no, I don't want to go fight you outside my friend's restaurant. The rules are the rules. So anyway, I thought, okay, well, this is done. And I'm like, you go outside and sit on your tailgate and watch the game and leave your tab open and you can come back in. And I got zero problem with that. And, but he just had a big old problem. And so I thought, surely this guy's not going to write a bad review. Well, he did. The next day he did. And he wrote this big old review. And I was just like, that is not how this went down. And, this is an easy one to reply to. So I replied back and I basically said, several things. And at the last, I said, you might want to go start a hospital CEO pizza fight club or something, And so anyway, it turns out several people I knew this guy.
Oh,
and they were like, hey, look, Carey's not who you want to argue with online. I'm just telling you, this is probably not a good look. It's not a good look, period.
Yeah.
And so they called me and they were like, hey, and I said, look, if he takes it down, then my rebuttal is going to come down. I said, the rules were the rules. He broke the rules. And it's no big deal, but, I just don't need that shit, So
basically,
rightfully so.
I've written a lot like that.
I think Carl Meyer from Black Abbey, whenever we had him on, he said one of his 1-star reviews was someone went into their tap room and then was like, great spot, great atmospheres, smells too much like alcohol. And he's like, what the, like, you're in a brewery. Like, you can see the cakes. They're right. Like, how do you walk in here and go, it smells like beer and you're offended? What are you doing in the brewery in that scenario?
Oh, no, I've gotten it all. I went in there, the brisket, this like for peg leg, went in there, the sides were good, the brisket was no good. And I'm like, well, that's because we don't serve it. Our bathrooms have concrete floors. I had somebody say one time, looks like the inside of a prison bathroom. And I was like, well,
they're concrete.
First of all, I don't know how those look, but obviously you do. And so, it just, I had one girl say she loved everything, but she was creeped out by the peg leg on the pig. And,
ma'am.
So I had to shame her by telling her I had one leg, and that's where that came from.
If you think the pig looks creepy, wait until you see it.
You should have just taken a picture of your leg and be like, look, is this creepier?
Yeah. I've gotten it all. We had one night at Nikki's Coal Fire. Tony and Carolyn had us bring in our reviews, and we all.
That's awesome.
We read our reviews and then read any responses we had.
That's great.
It's ridiculous. That's really cool. I didn't know how. I didn't realize how like family owned and family run you guys were. I knew you guys were only like 2 locations. There's a lot of other barbecue places in Nashville.
I actually have 4 restaurants.
You do? What are the other 2? I actually don't know about them.
So we've got Peg Leg, we've got Bringles Smoking Oasis, and then we have a partnership in the airport with Delaware North for our restaurant in their Pig Star, and that's on the Delta Gate on the B terminal. Okay. And then I'm partners with Kim and Levon Wallace, another family, and so it's a 2 family owned business.
Yeah,
FatBelly Pretzel and Deli over in East
Bay. Oh, cool. I didn't know you're associated with them. That's awesome.
Hold on a second. Yeah. What is it?
FatBelly Pretzel?
FatBelly?
Yeah, FatBelly Pretzel and Deli. If you've never had it, it's the best sandwich in Nashville, hands down.
Yeah, it's really good. I feel like we intentionally recorded this episode after lunchtime so we wouldn't be too starving the entire time. But that's really cool. That makes me want to support you even more because I don't feel like you're like aggressively trying to become like a chain restaurant or anything like that. You're just trying to do stuff and do stuff right.
We are. It's I've had partners, I've had good partners, and I've had bad partners, and the best partner I've had is just my family.
Yeah.
And so that works for us, and we've been very fortunate that we've been able to make that work. it's a tougher and tougher environment to make that work in Nashville these days.
Yes.
Our property tax went here in the Gulch from $9,900 up to $75,000.
Good God. Okay.
And
what?
Yeah, I wrote a letter about this when the mayor gave us a 34% tax increase in the middle of COVID.
Yeah.
I wrote a big old editorial about this, and it got quite a lot of attention. I think it got over 1 million views because our customers just don't know. Most people think, well, my property tax went up $300 or $400, and they think, well, that's the end of the world.
Yeah.
They don't understand that most of the taxes for the city services and things going on in this city fall at the feet of the business owners. And if you're a small business owner, it's really difficult. And we helped develop the Gulch, just like we talked about earlier. That was not the city that developed the Gulch. It was private investment. It was Market Street Properties. It was Yazoo. It was us. It was some people that took a risk and built a neighborhood that has now become a thriving community and a commerce hub for the city that generates millions upon millions in tax revenue.
Yep.
And and I'll have to tell you, we just feel like we've been punished for that.
Yeah.
And, you've got different views on that. The letter that I wrote was not, it was apolitical. It was, it was nonpartisan. But I got a lot of grief from a lot of people that were like, you're just a greedy business owner. I bet you treat your employees like crap.
Yeah.
You don't want to pay your fair share. And I said, well, what is my fair share? And they're like, well, your building has gone up so much in value because of the city. And I'm like, well, the city didn't do that. I did that.
Yeah.
And
it went up in value, but I'm not getting any of that right now.
Well, I went up in value, but unless I sell it, I don't get that profit. And if the city sucks that profit out of my business over the course of the next 20 years, it'll be a wash. I won't have made anything.
Yeah, I was going to say, you probably don't run on like high margins like most other large businesses do.
No.
So
and we're not like the high rises that we're surrounded by that can spread those taxes over 300 residents. For us, it's us. And in that letter, I predicted that we were going to lose some of the city's very iconic landmarks. And we did. We lost Rotier's. We lost Arnold's for a while. They're back now, but the reason they closed is they were tired of that. We lost a series of independently owned small businesses that were Nashville icons and gems. And we will continue to do that as long as the city continues down this path. And I just tried to bring that awareness to the masses and to the customers, because our customers had no idea that was our tax burden. They were floored, and they were like, "How can that be? How could you have a 700% or 800% tax increase in an 8-year period? That's insanity." And I'm like, "Well, that's what we have. You just don't know it." And I made a very big point when I wrote that letter and when I did interviews to say, "Hey, look, we're a popular business. We do well.
Yeah,
we can afford it. It doesn't mean it's justified or that we should have to pay it, but I can afford it." And my advocacy was, but I'm 5% of the independent business owners. The other 95% may not be able to afford to pay that. And when they can't, they're going to either sell or they're going to go out of business. And then you're going to lose the gems and the charm that brought these big developers and these businesses to Nashville in the first place. And then what do you have at that point?
Yeah.
The new LA.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, when we talk about dads and we talk about children, one of the things that brings me the greatest joy is going down into my dining room and seeing a customer with their child and their child enjoying the food, or seeing them year after year after year as a family tradition, or at every Preds game, or every other Preds game when they're headed downtown, and to see somebody create that tradition with their child in your establishment and it be meaningful to them, and them say, and then you watch that child grow up, and then that child brings their friends in when they go to college. And like, I've been coming here since I was 10.
Yeah, that's really cool.
That is very cool, and it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And that's one of the main reasons why we do this, because we like to make people feel good, and we want that feeling ourselves by sharing it with other families. And to lose places like Rotiers or like an Arnold's, or I'm forgetting 5-10 other places that we've lost, but it's a shame, because then where are you going to take your son?
Yep.
I mean, I grew up with my dad. We would go down to 2nd Avenue. There was the Nashville Dog, and down in Goodies on 2nd Avenue. He would go look for antique woodworking tools, and back then 2nd Avenue and Broadway were, gross for the most part. But then, when Pizza Perfect opened on Granny White, we started going there. And so I started going there in 7th or 8th grade and went with my dad. And then when my children were born, we lived not far from there. And so my children sat on the countertop at Pizza Perfect. They've gone their entire life with me and my wife. And, that is meaningful. And I'm still close friends with the owners, Amir and Ali, to this day. And
that's cool.
And those relationships and those bonds are really, food brings families together, and it can be a very meaningful relationship between your children and you.
Yeah.
For business, relationships are everything. I mean, in the landscape industry, that's how we grow our businesses, through those relationships. And without that, I mean, your business is kind of soulless.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I think we probably all, have those memories of like being with your parents, and it's like, all right, here's the special event. Where are we going out to eat afterwards? And where you go to eat afterwards is almost more important than the event itself.
Yeah.
So,
and it's usually not Chili's.
What are you talking about?
It's Applebee's.
Yeah.
That Chili's on West End will outlive all of us. I have no idea what you're talking about.
I hear you. The funny thing is, right next door to that Chili's, that house there, when I was in high school, was a bar called Banditos.
Okay.
And that's where we went as underage. They had a bucket of beer. They had a bucket of beer that wasn't like long necks. It was literally like a rope-handled mop bucket full of draft beer that they had a stack of cups and then a dipping cup. And that was the bucket of beer that we got back then.
I've heard of a lot of buckets of beer. I've never heard of that type of bucket of beer. That's amazing.
Oh yeah.
Carey, how we end all of our episodes is we ask every guest like 5 questions to end out the episode.
Yeah.
And then we'll let you go. And Justin, once you have it pulled up on your computer, he'll be ready to ask the first question.
Okay. All right. First question. I'm gonna change it up.
Change it up. Yep.
What is your favorite replacement curse word, or do you just curse and not have one?
I just curse and don't really have a replacement. I can tell you, if my children hear me say GD, they know that they've stepped way over the line. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Next question. Do you have a favorite TV or movie dad?
Yeah. So, well, I'll give you on the movie dad.
Yeah.
I love the movie Big Fish.
Yeah.
I thought that was an amazing movie about a father-son relationship.
Yep.
Also, there was another one with Tom Hanks and Jackie Gleason. I forget the name of it. It was an excellent father-dad movie. On TV, well, I loved Archie Bunker. All in the family. Yep. But on a more contemporary note, I thought that Everybody Loved Raymond captured the family, the realness of a family, probably as good or better than anybody.
Yep. Yeah. So. Yeah, his parents in that were hilarious. That's the best part.
Yes.
They were great.
Next question. Do you have a least favorite kids show that your kid used to watch constantly? Kids show or movie that you were just like,
what is this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that damn Teletubbies was really good. Teletubbies was bizarre.
Yeah.
Luckily, I'm too old to know too much about the Teletubbies. I never got into that or never really knew anybody that did.
It's the type of kid show where you turn it on and you're like, I don't know what drugs I was supposed to take before I turned this on.
Somebody was on some heavy drugs that made that show.
Yeah. Pretty much. And then said, I know, how about children? And you're like, no, don't do that.
But when I was growing up, we had some pretty weird kids shows. We had Sigmund the Sea Monster and H.R. Puff and stuff.
Yep.
There you go.
Weird, that was some psychedelic weird ass stuff right there.
That's the 60s and 70s for you.
Yep.
Next question. Whenever your kids were little, did you have like a favorite toy or activity you would do with them?
We'd run around the yard a lot and run around the house a lot. I did some woodworking and stuff, and I made my boys some wooden Tommy guns.
Fun.
Nice.
And it was right at the era where parents were starting to say, "Well, you can't let your kids play with guns," and I was like, "Well, that's a crock." Yes, I'm not only going to let my kids play with these guys, I'm going to make them some really, like their friends going to be like, "Oh my God." And I made them like life size out of oak stock with steel barrel Tommy guns. And they loved them. In fact, I found them in a warehouse the other day where we've been building a house and I found them in our moving stuff.
That's awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite things to do as a kid is play Army.
Oh, yeah.
So we had all those M16s and all that stuff that today probably would have got you in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
All right. Next question. And this is the last question. Mm-hmm. Best parenting advice you've received?
I think back to the criticizing your child in public. Mm-hmm. It's okay to correct or criticize your child. I would say pull them aside and do it in private, and try and do it in a constructive way rather than just constant critique.
Mm-hmm.
I struggle with that because I sometimes am a habitual critiquer.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I get that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are where you just look at something and you're like, if you just did this a little bit differently, it'd be, never mind. I just destroyed you in that moment. Sorry, my bad.
Destroyed your confidence.
My bad. Carey, the only other thing we have is just a moment for self-promotion. So like if we want to follow, like promote Instagrams, restaurants, all that stuff, we want to learn more about you, eat your food, all that good stuff.
Sure. Yeah. You can find us at Peg Leg Porker and at Bringles Smoking Oasis. At Peg Leg Porker Spirits, at Carey Bringle, and I think that's most all of them.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
got a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, you said 8 businesses.
And then for FatBelly at FatBelly Pretzel. So
yes,
awesome.
Yes, but Carey, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for hanging out with us for a bit.
Really appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, thank y'all. I appreciate it. That was fun, and y'all have a great rest of the day.
Awesome. Thank you so much,
Hope to see you there sometime.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for listening. Please make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at The Nashville Dads, and make sure to follow us on anywhere you find your podcast, and please give us a 5-star rating. And thank you to Matt Oakes for providing the music for the episode. Catch you next time.